district you're from, if that's okay. And so we'll start, Senator Wilburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Rick Wilburn from the 35th Senate District, which consists of 7 counties: Rice, Ellsworth, Marion, Morris, Chase, Dickinson, and McPherson. And I'm now in the 7th year in the Senate and happen to be Vice President of the Senate. Welcome to the committee.
Ty Masterson, 16th District, which is somewhat suburbia horseshoe around East Wichita. So if you're familiar with the geography down there, Derby, Andover, Augusta, Bel Air, and then significant portions of north and southeast Wichita. So apparently I found out today I'm the only one that's had prior experience on the Confirmation Oversight Committee because I've been here a minute. So I've been in the Senate since '08.
I'm Senator Dinah Sykes. I represent the 21st District, which is in Johnson County, all of the city of Lenexa and Northwest Overland Park. It's my 5th year in the Senate, and I am the Senate Minority Leader.
I'm Larry Alley. I'm from Winfield. I represent the 32nd District. I have 7 counties, going from Cali County all the way out to Protection and Coldwater area. And this is my 5th year in the Senate, and I'm Majority Leader.
Senator Rick Billinger from Goodland, Kansas, and I represent the 40th District, which is the largest Senate district in the state of Kansas. I represent 14 counties. So basically, if you're on I-70 going to Colorado, when you hit mile marker 175, I have everything west of there and north to Nebraska. Pretty much covers it. Thank you.
Can't beat him on landmass, that's for sure. So I'm Senator Pat Petty. I represent the 6th District, which is a good portion of Wyandotte County and a very, very small portion of Johnson County. And I'm the minority whip, and I came to the Senate in 2013, actually.
Well, thank you very much. We also have with us members of staff, Jessica Farmer is with research, and Mike Helms with the Research Revisor's Office, and Connie Burns will be our committee assistant. And these people are here to respond to any procedural questions that any of you may have. You also be provided a list on your desk of all the information that was passed out. And we also have at your seats on the statutes concerning this confirmation, Senate Rule 55, and the processes for gubernatorial, non-gubernatorial appointments. And also your pay vouchers are on your desk, and please fill those out and return those to Connie when you get done. We have 6 appointments today for confirmation and 1 reappointment. So we'll start the interview process. Now, what we're going to do is a little bit different than what we've done in the past, I understand, but we're going to ask the candidates to come in one at a time. You may remain in afterwards, but would like, if it's the will of the chairman to do this on an individual basis, and so we'd like the candidates to have a seat out in the hallway, and then we'll call you in one at a time, and then afterwards, we'll entertain a motion at the end of the interviews on the voting for that. So, and the first, I think you have a list. Do you all have a list of when? Okay. So Michelle Ewart is our first candidate, so she can stay in. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here, Michelle. If you would tell us a little bit about the board you're going to be on, and tell us about yourself.
Absolutely. So thank you so much to the senators for talking with me today about my nomination for the board of the State Board of Indigenous Defense Services. I am really delighted and honored to be considered for this position. My resume was included with my application, so rather than walking through that, what I'd like to do is talk to you about what my vision is for how the board members serve SBIDs and how I'm an excellent fit for that. So for any board, the board members fill several important functions. They support and promote the mission of the organization. They ensure the financial health of the organization so it can carry out its mission. And they use their influence and relationships to help the organization access resources and grow. I am well positioned to fulfill each of these responsibilities. First, I understand and support the mission of SBIDS. The Sixth Amendment of the Constitution guarantees criminal defendants the right to counsel. When the founding fathers were envisioning what this country would look like, they wanted to have a government that protected the rights of the people and where there was no government overreach. And so the Constitution and its amendments are the way they structured that new government. SBIDS is the way that we in Kansas ensure the defendants have the right to counsel in felony cases, and the way that we comply with statutory and constitutional requirements. Kansas is legally obligated to provide this service. Failing to properly administer the public defender system could result in litigation against the state through ineffective assistance of counsel claims, through appeals, and through innocence cases. But beyond the issue of constitutional requirement, there's another really good reason to support a robust public defender system, and that's judicial efficiency. As Assistant Deputy DA Jason McElrath alluded to in his letter of support for my nomination, cases just work better when all the parties have counsel. That's because the cases progress more smoothly, because the attorneys understand the procedural rules. And when attorneys can explain to their clients what the law is, how it operates, and why things are playing out the way they are, people tend to be more satisfied with the outcome of cases, even if it wasn't what they initially would have hoped for. In my own career in legal services and at law school clinics, I've represented low-income litigants in a wide range of civil matters. I'm committed to access to justice. I support the SBID's mission to provide representation in the criminal context as well. Second, I would help ensure the financial health of SBIDS. The September 2020 report on the status of public defense in Kansas details the issues related to recruitment and retention in the public defender system and the private assigned counsel system, which are the two parts of how we do criminal defense in Kansas. So for the public defenders, the main issues are low salaries, high caseloads, and inadequate training. For assigned counsel, the main barrier is low compensation. People simply can't run law firms if they don't have the money to pay their staff and their overhead. I understand these recruitment and retention issues personally because I lived them for many years in civil legal services. I spent part of my career in rural California representing survivors of domestic violence and child abuse and elder abuse, and then part of my career in Baltimore in homeless services. And in both of these legal aid positions, there is significant pressure on me to take on more cases than I could competently handle. Because if I didn't take the case, there was no other lawyer to do so, and people would be without counsel. I get high caseloads. In both settings, I had a lower salary than my peers who were in private practice or did government work. I understand the issues of low compensation. And in both settings, the training budgets for my organizations were low. In fact, in one of them, the organization had 6 to 8 attorneys. The training budget for the entire organization was $150 a year. I get how hard it is to keep your litigation skills fresh and stay up to date on the law if there is not money to train you. So I have personal experience in both urban and rural settings dealing with the exact same issues that SBIDS is facing in terms of recruitment and retention for its public defenders and assigned counsel. I understand how important it is to use limited resources effectively. And finally, I would use my influence and relationships to strengthen SBIDS. As a law professor at Washburn, I'm active in many bar associations and professional organizations, and I do trainings for judges and attorneys around the state. I'm connected to alumni, which means that I have a chance to reach out to attorneys who might be excellent pro bono trainers or people who might be good contract attorneys or other assigned counsel. Well, it would certainly be best for SBIDS to have an increase in its budget, so it could hire more people to be in-house public defenders or in-house trainers. There are ways that we can work to leverage existing resources in the community to help strengthen the organization. And I am well positioned to help identify those resources and individuals. So thank you for this chance to talk to you about my nomination. I'm a Kansan by choice. I'm not from here, but I chose to come here and I love this state. I bought a house here, I'm a licensed foster care parent here, and I am actively seeking out opportunities to be a leader. I hope you will consider and approve my nomination for the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Yes, Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Michelle, thank you for the work that it takes to make an application and be part of this process. You know, the legislature this year actually did make a financial commitment to increase the hourly or the daily for indigent lawyers. So I'd like for you to maybe express your thoughts on that. And then I know you mentioned that you have experience in both urban and rural, and also now serving as a professor. How do you see those three areas working towards your position on the board?
Absolutely. So in terms of the first question, at the time the 2020 report was written, the compensation rate for the assigned counsel was $80 an hour, which is incredibly low compared to the hourly rate that most attorneys charge. My understanding is that there was an approved increase to $100 an hour, which is still below what SBIDS had requested and is still far below the going rate for counsel when they're charging paid clients. And so there's still work to do. That $20 an hour increase is a step in the right direction, but it's not where we need to be if we want to be able to attract and recruit and retain excellent private counsel. Did that adequately answer that part of the question? Great. In terms of the urban-rural issues, it's important that board members understand the challenges on the ground facing both the public defenders who are employees of SBIDS and also the assigned attorneys who are taking on this really important role to fill in the gaps. And the challenges facing, provision of services in the rural area is different than in the urban area. The issues of compensation are the same and training are the same, but those of you that live in more rural districts, how far does you have to travel to get to meetings? And so, if you are an attorney practicing in a rural setting, you might not be able to meet as easily with clients if they can't get to you, if they don't have gas money, or there's not good public transportation. And if you're trying to cover an area that's maybe 6 or 7 counties long or wide or high, it could be hard to get to courthouses in different areas. So when I was in California, I covered 2 different counties. I was the only free DV attorney in those 2 counties, and I was bouncing back and forth between courthouses. That's a real challenge, and what that means is just doing a case takes longer because you have to build in more travel time. So that's a challenge for rural attorneys. In terms of urban attorneys, demand for free legal service is incredibly high. And it's just gotten higher under the pandemic as more people have lost work, been laid off, had hours reduced. And so the volume facing many of these public defender offices is just incredible. That's something that we have to deal with as we think about how to set up this system so it functions most smoothly to serve people.
Other question? Senator Sykes.
Thank you for being here, Michelle. You have a very exemplary resume, and I loved your work with domestic violence. I introduced legislation a couple of years ago, which I believe everyone in the Senate voted for housing protections for victims of domestic violence.
Thank you for that.
My question is, what brought you back to Kansas? You said you're a Kansan by choice. So share a little bit about that, and then I have a follow-up question.
So I have some roots in Kansas, actually. My parents are in the back, Meryl and Priscilla Ewart. My father and most of his siblings went to Tabor College, and so I've got a lot of family in the area, cousins. But I came here for Washburn. I loved Washburn and was excited about the job, but then I fell in love with the big sky and the prairie and the breweries and the bike trails and the libraries, and thought, this is where I want to spend the rest of my life. And I am so excited by the fact that we are, a small but scrappy state. Small in terms of population, big in terms of geography, as we've established, but small in population. But people who really care and want to, get involved in their communities and make things better, and I'm very excited to be a part of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The other thing that I loved in one of your recommendation letters, when you were the lone observer in the gallery, I guess my question is, do you try to influence your students to do that as well? And, I hope there's more people who are trying to engage, students and new people into any industry to really get out there, have those conversations, and learn. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And more of a comment than a question, something I've grown to appreciate about lawyers is they're pretty thorough with their answers when it comes to the paperwork. And so there was nothing in there I found that I thought rose to the level that I needed to know more. So just appreciate you be willing to do it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I have one. Actually, it's when we talked on the phone, and you had mentioned just a moment ago that one of the problems with the defense was low salary and high caseload, and you had some interesting ways to solve that problem. Could you go over that for us, please?
Yeah, so when the senator and I had talked earlier, I guess it was last week, one of the things I talked about a little bit was when we take, when we raise our hands and take the oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution, in this case of Kansas, we commit to a whole range of things that regular folks don't commit to. And one of them is being invested in justice. And the way it's written in the Kansas Rules of Professional Conduct, we say that we are going to further the public's understanding of and confidence in the rule of law. We are going to be mindful of deficiencies in the administration of justice and of the fact that poor and sometimes persons who are not poor cannot afford adequate legal assistance. And so all of lawyers should devote professional time and resources and use their civic influence to ensure equal access to our system of justice. So what this means is every single attorney, when they take their oath, they say, I am going to be involved in this in some way. And so what the senator and I had talked about was how can we get folks who are in private practice, who are not doing this as their profession, but might have time to take, 1 or 2 cases or do a training for free. This is consistent with their oath. And so, like I said, it will be best to fully fund SBIDs to meet the needs given the current demands they're facing and what their, staff need in terms of training. But there are people that are untapped who could, I'm sure, do some, trainings every year. 1 training a year is not so heavy a lift to help supplement the training budget. Or, people who would say, I can't sign up to be, a regular contract attorney, but I would be willing to be considered for, 1 case here or there if they have the skill set to do so. I mean, criminal defense is a very specialized area of law, and we don't want people just sort of running amok. But I think that there are people who have not thought about the fact that they could help support this system. And in fact, they took an oath saying they would do that when they became lawyers. So I think there's a lot of untapped potential.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. And as I said earlier, you may remain in the room here, conference room, during the rest.
Okay.
Thank
you very much, Senators.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, so we're not going to confirm one at a time. We're going to do it as a whole at the end.
We will vote at the end.
Thank you.
One at a time. We will
Not
vote.
person by person.
It will, person by person is the plan. So the next person on our list is Mr. Taylor Hyde, and he's for the State Banking Board. Good morning. Afternoon, I guess this.
It is afternoon. Thank you.
So what we're going to ask you to do is just tell us a little bit about yourself and also about the position that you're looking for.
Absolutely. I have prepared some opening remarks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, ranking members of the committee. My name is Taylor Height, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to appear before you in support of my appointment to the 2nd Congressional District banker position on the State Banking Board. I'm a 5th-generation Kansan, and I've lived in Southeast Kansas my entire life, except for 3 years in Topeka while I attended law school, and a few years in Lawrence after law school. My education consists of an undergraduate degree in justice studies, which is essentially a criminal justice degree, and a master's degree in justice administration, both from Pittsburgh State University, and a law degree from Washburn University School of Law. After law school, my professional career began in the Kansas Court of Appeals as an in-chambers research attorney for Judge Crystal Marquardt, where I reviewed and analyzed relevant case law and legislation to provide objective guidance in a clear and conspicuous manner to all judges. As one of the toughest but fairest mentors I've ever known, Judge Marquardt reinforced in me that life is not always fair, but everyone should be treated fairly, and that one must prove themselves worthy every day. I then had the opportunity to start a family and move back to my hometown in southeast Kansas as the VP cashier of a small, struggling bank named American Bank of Baxter Springs. Coming out of the Great Recession, American Bank, like many other banks in Kansas and the country, had quite a few problem loans and was under an enforcement action. Consequently, in my 10-year banking career thus far, I've most likely been through more than the average number of bank examinations by the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City and the Kansas OSBC, which I believe two gentlemen behind me could probably attest to that. But I've learned that there's no substitute for operating a bank in a safe and sound manner and developing professional, transparent relationships with regulators and other bankers. My responsibilities at American Bank quickly expanded from managing daily operations and accounting to include human resources and information technology. So in early 2017, to enhance my knowledge of technology and cybersecurity, I became a certified banking ethical hacker. This certification provided me with real-world cybersecurity offensive and defensive knowledge and a better understanding of the risks and challenges faced by the banking industry. Over the last 5 years in my position as president and CEO, I've supervised 30 to 35 employees on a daily basis concerning all aspects of bank operations, including lending, compliance, regulations, risk mitigation, and cybersecurity. As a member of the State Banking Board, I will strive to find new efficiencies and promote competition within the banking industry, work closely with the state banking associations and all state-chartered banks and trusts, and fulfill the mission of the State Banking Board. I look forward to the opportunity to work on behalf of the people of Kansas, and I'm eager to address any challenges faced by the Kansas banking industry. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Yes, we'll start with Senator Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, with your cybersecurity, I'm not so sure we shouldn't be confirming you, Department of Labor. But actually, are you familiar at all? The question I have, are you familiar with all, we passed some legislation this last session that dealt with technologically enabled fiduciary financial institutions. Everybody was calling them TEFI. Were you familiar with any of that, or we think you'll have a role in how that moves forward through the pilot program? I was just curious, if you are, could you have your view on it? If not, I understand, because you're new.
I have a rudimentary understanding of the TEFIs. Of course, I might say my understanding is wrong, but essentially it's a vehicle for large investors to pull liquidity out of a company that's generally with illiquid assets. Then those fees that are charged get sent to the economic development zones as a way to boost economic development. My understanding is the commissioner is working really hard with the applicant and to make it a success.
That's my understanding too. Just curious if you were aware.
That's about the extent of my knowledge, unfortunately, so far.
Senator Sykes.
Thank you for being here, Taylor. So my question on your experience, I would love to know your thoughts on mobile banking versus, that established relationship with your banking. My son just last week went to our bank, which is being remodeled at the time, but he's always done mobile banking. So what do you think that's doing to banking in our state and hurting some of these smaller banks, and how do we rectify that?
It's a difficult situation. My bank's kind of in this phase too. Our average customer is about 56 years old, and very few of them know about mobile banking or care to use mobile banking. So we still have to maintain that relationship, and I'll say it's the preferred way that my bank chooses to deal with the customer. However, many of the younger generation, they really want that ease and the speed of banking. For them, I like to say banking for them is something you do, not someplace you go. So it's definitely a dichotomy. But what we try to do is say mobile banking complements the relationship and not just supersedes any type of relationship.
Senator Wilburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Taylor, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Senator.
Last few years, the Kansas Bankers Association has made presentations to the Banking Committee, and they report about all the mergers and the trend we're headed in, fewer and fewer banks. How do you view that trend, and is that harmful to the rural communities?
When I started in banking about 10 years ago, and I know I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but there were roughly 230 banks in Kansas, and I think now that number is closer to 180, 185. If you just looked at the numbers, I think it would be a disturbing trend. However, the assets, the deposit numbers in that same time frame have grown. So while there is some consolidation, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think kind of piggybacking right on the mobile banking question, a lot of the younger generation really wants all of the technology that, say, a JP Morgan or a Bank of America can offer. And it's simply not feasible financially for a very small institution to do that. So in a way, it's providing more services to the consumer, even though we have fewer banks. I do believe that there will be a plateau. We'll get to a point, there won't be 5 banks in Kansas, I think. The competition will still be there. The entrepreneurship will still be there. So while it could be a disturbing trend, I don't view it as such. Welcome.
Any other questions? Well, Taylor, I looked through your packet, and we had one question. I think we talked about this when we were on the phone, but your question here was you sent a letter to Bank President Doug Warren and supporting legislation that would level the playing field between credit unions and the bank regarding certain types of tax-free income. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yes, Senator. The thought process behind sending the letter was, I believe in competition. And when you pick and choose certain businesses to get a tax break and others that can't have that same tax break, while they're both engaged in substantially the same business, it creates an unfair advantage. And I've experienced that many times in a small community in southeast Kansas. If you've got that credit union that's not paying taxes, they can pretty much beat you out on rate almost every single time. So my intention was just equity. I want fairness, open competition, transparency between all of the banking entities.
Thank you.
Welcome.
The other question that I had was I looked at your experience. And in your experience, you had a couple statements in there that I thought were intriguing. One of them was reduced operating expenses by redistributing the workload, one. And then you audited the communication expenses, and you found quite a savings there. And then you had you want to increase revenues and decrease expenses. So how's that going to carry over into the banking?
I hope just the same. In a small community bank, there's lots of things that get overlooked. No matter how many experts you have come in and look at everything. When I first came into the bank, I realized that our personal bankers just sat there. Their job was to open accounts. And you can imagine in a community of 3,000 people and 2 banks, they weren't busy all the time. So it was fairly easy to look around and say, you know what, if you're doing this, you can do other things too. I hope to bring that same fresh look at some of the rules and regulations, but certainly maintain that mission of the State Banking Board, promote competition, protect the consumer, and overall just provide guidance for safe and sound institutions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. And again, you're welcome to stay and listen to the rest.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next is Monica Holloway in Kansas Development Finance Authority. Welcome.
Hey, nice to be here. Are you guys ready?
We are ready. You can just tell us a little bit about the Kansas Development Financial Authority and a little bit about yourself.
All right. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, Ranking Member, and members of the committee. My name is Monica Holloway, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to appear before you guys today for my appointment to the Kansas Development Finance Authority Board. I am a lifelong Kansan resident and have lived in Wichita all my life. I was raised by my maternal grandmother, as both my parents suffered from substance abuse addictions. I grew up in poverty. However, education was always the backdrop of our home. Coupled with the importance of education, I was raised and still have a strong Christian faith. My education consists of a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Wichita State University, and I have a master's degree in business administration from Southwestern College. Shortly after graduating from Wichita State University, I began working at Big Brothers and Big Sisters as a match support specialist and then as a supervisor of the Bigs in Schools program. I was employed by Big Brothers and Big Sisters for a total of 3 years while I completed my MBA. I was later offered a position, with Wichita Kenworth Incorporated. This role consisted, the position was account manager of Wichita Kenworth. This role consisted of launching and developing the leasing and rental department, which included generating leads, analyzing price proposals, and completing monthly profit and loss reports. My customer base was majority small business owners and farmers. I served in this role for 3 years. Over the last 9 years, I have worked at WSU for the National Institute for Aviation Research Department. As a NIAR Federal Contract and Compliance Manager, I am responsible for drafting, reviewing, negotiating contracts and grants, and ensuring all contractual documents are in compliance with state and federal laws and regulations. Additionally, I generate and review internal budgets to align with contractual obligations as well. Throughout my career, I have had an opportunity to work and interact with a variety of different demographics, large and small businesses, and ensure compliance with internal policies, state and federal laws, and regulations. I believe this experience, coupled with my humble upbringing, can bring a different perspective to the KDFA's board decision-making process. As a KDFA board member, I will strive to review all applications fairly and ethically. And I look forward to the opportunity to work on the behalf of the people of Kansas, and I'm eager to work alongside the other KDFA board members. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Seeing that, I've got one question. Number one, I'm glad that you're a builder. Mound builder, that is, from Southwestern College in Winfield. And second, we did get to tour, I've got to tour NIAR, and the work you do is very, very interesting out there. And we do appreciate what you do. Any other questions? Not, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Our next candidate is Mr. Carl Ice for the Kansas Board of Regents. Welcome, Mr. Ice.
Hi, how are you, sir?
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name's Carl Ice, and I'm honored for the opportunity to appear before you in support of my appointment to the Kansas Board of Regents. I'm a native Kansan, born and raised in Topeka. My 42-year career at what is now BNSF Railway started here as well. My job with the railroad took me out of state to Chicago and then Fort Worth, where I recently retired. However, my family and I have always considered Kansas our home. That's why we've maintained a home in Manhattan since 2006. My experience in higher education began at Coffeyville Community College, where I learned the value of a 2-year institution and opening doors of education to Kansans who could not afford to attend a 4-year school. After graduating with an Associate's of Arts degree from Coffeyville, my wife Mary and I were able to attend Kansas State University, where we became the first people in our families to earn a degree from a 4-year school. We were able to do this through holding various jobs and through the support of the state and others who wanted to expand opportunities for more students. That generosity made a difference for my wife and me, and we have never forgotten. We were helped by others, and we think it's the responsibility of people who've been blessed with the ability to help to do so. We've been engaged philanthropically with Kansas State ever since. Additionally, my involvement includes my current role as chair of the Kansas State University Foundation and a member of the board of the K-State Alumni Association. In prior years, I also chaired the College of Engineering Advisory Council and the Department of Industrial Engineering Advisory Council. My career with BNSF Railway also connected me to Kansas higher education through BNSF's formal partnership with Johnson County Community College. Together in 1988, we created the National Academy of Railway Sciences, or NARS. NARS is a certificate program for students seeking employment in the railroad industry. The program offers training in simulated situations for several career paths at the railroad that span from being a conductor to a locomotive mechanic. We were able to incorporate elements of this curriculum into the diesel technology program at Washburn Institute of Technology here in Topeka. This was created through a partnership between BNSF, Washburn Tech, the Kansas Department of Commerce, and the Kansas Board of Regents. Higher education has been a common thread through my life, personally and professionally, and I believe this experience would be beneficial to my service on the Board of Regents. Our Kansas institutions of higher learning are tremendous assets for all Kansans, and I mean all Kansas. This includes equipping the next generation with the skills and capabilities to thrive and contribute to a vibrant Kansas economy, and also includes someone later in life who's reskilling for a second career. Said another way, Kansas higher education creates the workforce pipeline for the Kansas economy. Our institutions are engines of growth for businesses of all sizes in every part of the state, which also means we must be mindful of the needs of the business community. Part of this effort is focusing our attention on making Kansas a hub of research and innovation for growing sectors of the global economy. I will strive to ensure higher education in Kansas retains its margins of excellence while driving for continuous improvement to ensure our institutions are not only competitive, but a step above other states. While we are fortunate to have such outstanding 4-year colleges and universities, I'm also mindful of the importance and the potential of our community colleges. And education is proven to be a determinant in greater income potential and quality of life. 2-year programs provide a path to employment and being able to support a family. Throughout the state, community and tech colleges graduates go on to be leaders in their communities, from nursing, fire, and EMS services to manufacturing, business, and many other sectors. We should always look for more ways to help more Kansans take that first step in their communities. I look forward to serving the people of Kansas on the Board of Regents. I'm grateful for the opportunity to do so. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Yes, Senator Wilburn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Ice, very much for being here. As you know, Kansas has a little less than 3 million people, 286 school districts, 23 community colleges and tech schools, 6 Board of Regents. That's a pretty heavy infrastructure load for 3 million people. How do you respond to that?
Well, I understand your point. And by the way, if you're comfortable, please call me Carl, sir. Thanks for your time today. I think it'd be presumptuous of me to have a position to know exactly what should happen with all that. I do think it's important that we work to be efficient and have sustainable partnerships. At the same time, I think it's important to listen to all the stakeholders and understand their positions, as I understand that the legislature has a key role in that. So I would want to learn and understand how everything can contribute and work to a cohesive system.
Senator Seitz.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Mr. Ice. Also, I want to say thank you for talking about the partnership with BNSF and Johnson County Community College. This last year, after I think 3 years of trying to figure it out, and we passed the Promise Scholarship for certificate programs and kind of that last dollar scholarship. Talk about your relationship with BNSF and the NARS program at the community college and how you can help have those conversations about other workforce needs in our state.
Okay, well, thank you, Senator, and please, you also can call me Carl. That's perfectly fine. Well, NARS is a great program. It was established a long time ago, as I mentioned in my remarks, and not only does it offer the certificate program, it's actually the backbone for BNSF's training program around the whole country. So actually, programs for an engineer getting their recertification happen through there. So I'm very enthusiastic about it. I did read a little about the Promise Scholarship. I do think I need to learn more, but I'm very supportive of scholarships. I think it's important for everyone having access and opportunity and support to get a higher education. I think my business experience background would let me have conversations. We've explored that at BNSF with other colleges. Maybe not ever done quite as well as we did at Johnson County Community College, but we'd keep working on that. And I think I could give relevant experience, talk about relevant experiences.
Thank you. And I have one other. So after graduating from K-State, you remained very active. As you said, you were helped by others, so you wanted to share that. How do you pass that on to the next generation about, giving back to your state? You're also someone who had a very successful career, started in Kansas, moved to different cities, but then came back, as we were talking about, kind of brain drain and, the talk of wanting to keep everyone here. But I think it's okay to kind of spread your wings for a little bit and then come back. But can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. There's a lot in there, Senator, but I'll try. Well, so first of all, I do think when you're talking about a connection, I think everybody wants to be involved with things they think are relevant and important. And that's what happened to us with Kansas State. We saw that being the case. So I don't think that just applies to our relationship with Kansas State. It applies to others with other relationships. And frankly, we've done other things philanthropically as well because we think that's just really important. And I think that's just working to instill in people the importance of that, I think. I mentioned the responsibility for that. But I also think that things like, if you're talking about a university, things like Alumni Association, the foundation, or engaging with faculty, you see great things happen. And one of the magical things in life is when you do something because you think it's right, it also puts you in a position to feel the reward of all that happening and see great things happen. And then I think that feeds on itself. So I think every time we can expose people to that, it would be helpful. Thank you.
Senator Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of my layers of questions have already now been asked and answered. So I'll go straight to politics of some of this because you're about to, you've been a businessman, you're about to step into politics. And kind of a hot button issue of today and some of the transitions that are happening on our campuses with, education and theory. I'd like to have your comments, thoughts on the embedding of some of the racist theories like critical race theory and its role in higher education as it pertains to your seat, because you're going to take a seat in a very important, these institutions oversee a segment of our population at very formidable times. I'd just love to hear your comments on that.
Okay, well, thank you, sir. Well, some people might say there's politics in business too, but I understand your point, and I don't take lightly the importance of this. That's why I'm enthusiastic about the opportunity and hope you all will see that the same way. And I think my background experience gives me a chance to make an impact. So I think one of the things you should expect, that you should count on from me, is that I'll listen, I'll learn, I'll form a perspective, I'll engage with people. I think that's the right way to do things. And so my first answer about something like this sort of starts with that, but then that seems inadequate for a question that's as discussed as much as this is. And I think the reason for that for me is because when I heard the question or think about the issue, I start thinking about diversity and inclusion. And diversity and inclusion is important to me, to my family, to BNSF, to other businesses, to higher education, to people, and it's personal. But what that also means then is it's personal to other people who ask about this and talk about this. I'm sure it's personal to all of you. And so I think what that means is that you all have strong beliefs too. And so actually the idea of learning more and making sure I understood, I think is actually an enduring approach. But having said that, what I think our institutions of higher learning do and should keep doing is teach people how to think, help them with how to think as opposed to what to think. And as a regent, I'd always encourage how to think.
Any other questions? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you bring an interesting perspective since you've been in a community college, even though it's been a few years ago, and then moved on to one of our region's institutions. But over the years, we have had probably more than one conversation about the relationship between our community colleges and our regions, and is the Regent supportive of our community colleges and our tech schools? And I'm just wondering, from your own experience, since you've went from one to the other and now been involved with K-State in many roles for a long time, what do you see as your role as you come into the regions to support or strengthen that relationship?
Well, as I said in my opening statement, I do think community colleges are really important, and I know I personally benefited from that. It has been quite a while ago, so I'm not sure I can give you every memory or that you even want all of those, but it was an important step for us. My wife and I met there and then went on to Kansas State after that. I think it's an important part of our education system. You know, as I mentioned, I think it's a way for people to get engaged with higher education and grow and develop. And again, I think that's one of the most important things we could do, have has access to higher education for everybody so they can reach their unique potential. Now, I know the regions are considering a number of things about this, and I wouldn't suggest I know ahead of time what all those are and what I should think, but I do know it's important that it's well coordinated. And I do know that someone who graduates or gets credit from a community college should have access to and transferability to the other institutions. And I'd be supportive of that for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Carl?
Thank you, sir.
I have one question, and that's our 19 community colleges are doing about 70% of the training for tech ed, and which results in about 70% of the workforce. What do you think our community college, and I think you'll probably answer a little bit of that with Senator Petty's question, but what's the role of community colleges in higher education? And I'm looking at funding and quality. Okay.
Well, again, I think that's important. I thought it from the day I was asked about this. I think it's one of the things I mentioned as this was all first talked about. I thought it was important to be in my opening statement. And I probably should have mentioned a moment ago, my wife and I also have stayed active supporting Coffeyville Community College philanthropically as well. We support a couple scholarships and some other things there. So I think our actions all very much support. We think it's important. Again, for specifics about funding, I look forward to really learning more before I am as articulate as I should be. But I believe you can count on me to know that's important, to pay attention to the community colleges. And as you said, a skilled workforce is incredibly important. That's the other thing I believe I bring with my background at BNSF is we have a tremendous number of skilled people that do very, very important jobs. I always say great people that do important work. And they do that because of the things they've learned. And technical colleges and certificates certainly fit with that.
Thank you. Any other questions? I will say this, that your background and experience is something we need to look at because you went from an intern to CEO, and we want to thank you for that.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm proud of that, and I'm very proud of BNSF. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next person on our list would be Dr. Cynthia Lane. Welcome. Thank you very much for being here today. First of all, I think that if you just tell us a little bit about yourself and about the Board of Regents.
All right, Senator, I will. Chair Alley, Vice Chair Sykes, and members of the committee, it is certainly an honor to be standing before you here today. My name is Cynthia Lane, and I'm really grateful to share a little bit about who I am and a few of my thoughts about the appointment to the Board of Regents. I think it's important that you know that I am a lifelong Kansan. I was born in Kansas and grew up in Parsons in the southeast corner of our state. My family has a strong history in Kansas. My grandparents and my parents were entrepreneurs, cultivating several small businesses that served as the lifeblood for our family. I grew up surrounded by messages of family, community, service, and education. And I also grew up learning very early. It was an expectation of Grandma Minnie that you learned about hard work and you learned about determination. And so those principles have really guided my life's work and my personal journey. My education is also Kansas grown. I earned my Bachelor of Science and Master of Science in Education from Pittsburgh State University, and I earned my doctorate in education from the University of Kansas. So I like to think about my professional experiences as almost spanning the realm of education, including serving as superintendent for the Kansas City, Kansas Public School District. I've also been an assistant superintendent, a classroom teacher, director of special education, and for several years worked with parents in a group called the Parent Professional Advocacy Coalition. And that was all about getting parents to the table to talk about their educational needs, not because they didn't want to be at the table, but frankly because of the kinds of barriers that are sometimes in place. While serving as superintendent, I had the privilege to lead a dynamic team and to work for a board that was very innovative and had high expectations for our children. They developed an initiative called the Diploma Plus Initiative, which is all about graduating students with their high school diploma, plus industry-recognized credentials, plus dual and concurrent enrollment experiences, and attending technical school while in high school. See, that the board and the team recognize that our students need more than their high school diploma in order to access the kind of quality life that many of us dream for our kids. So that was a powerful experience, which resulted in the highest graduation rate that the district had realized up to that point. Significant numbers of students enrolled in dual and concurrent enrollment, and significant numbers of students participating in technical education and even completing their industry endorsements. Currently, I serve as co-chair for the Governor's Council on Education, and I see this as an opportunity to strengthen the alignment between business and education and the workforce systems so that we can better position Kansas for high-skilled, high-demand opportunities. So while working with the Kansas Chamber and other members of the council, we spent significant time listening to businesses talk about their challenges. And because of that work, Governor Kelly in February established the Advantage Kansas Coordinating Council, of which I am a standing member. And the Advantage Kansas is all about alignment of business and education in order to ensure that we have high-wage, high-demand opportunities for all Kansans. It's really about driving the economy. So the goal is for Kansas to be the best in the Midwest at post-secondary readiness and success, to be the best in the Midwest at creating high-wage, high-demand, high-needs, and critical needs positions that our citizens can access, and to be the best in the Midwest in business attraction, retention of our talent, and expansion of business opportunities. So those opportunities, Senator Alley, are why I'm here today in front of you, interested in an appointment to the Kansas Board of Regents. I believe the Kansas Board of Regents strategic plan, Building a Future, is well positioned to help us move forward on those important goals. In several ways, the Regents can be a leader. First, strategic partnerships with business and industry. Those partnerships that result in intentional job growth. Second, to support regionally designed economic development strategies. Third, to develop and retain our talent for those high growth and emerging industries. And fourth, critically important, the Board of Regents focus on equity to ensure all Kansans have access to the opportunities. So I believe my prior experience could be of great benefit to helping to advance those goals. and I look forward to working on behalf of all Kansans to address our challenges and to focus on our opportunities. So if confirmed, I want you to know that I am here to commit to working to ensure strong governance, strong fiscal oversight, and really important to me is stakeholder engagement as we work together to move our state forward. Thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Other questions? Senator Wilburn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Lane, for being here. I'll ask you this question. I asked the prior committee also. You mentioned fiscal oversight as part of your concerns. As you know, we have approximately 3 million people in Kansas, a little less. We have 286 school districts, 23 technical schools and junior colleges, and 6 border regions. It seems to me that that's a pretty heavy load for 3 million people. Do you have a response to that?
Well, Senator Wilburn, what I'd want to understand is what is the return on investment for each and every one of those aspects. I think collectively, the regions and the legislative body sitting together, really examining what are we trying to achieve, and do we have the right resources in the right place to achieve that. I think about fiscal management as a cycle that starts with what are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? How are we aligned? What are our leading indicators that tell us that we're on success? What are the efficiency strategies that we need to examine to make sure that we are in line with doing what we need to do to achieve our goals? And then what's the sustainability plan? So looking at all of those things with multiple eyes, I would say that we need to take a look at whether or not we have the right structure, the right systems, the right amount. And also keeping in mind 2 things: regional access and impact, and equity issues, so that we can make sure that all citizens in every region have access to high-quality experiences that lead to quality jobs.
Senator Masterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. I have 3 questions. One just popped up because I want to make sure I understand, because I've learned, particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, some people use the same words but mean different things, and since we both speak English, but we may not understand what that, could you define equity for me as it pertains to difference from equality in the way you mean it?
Equality might mean that we all get the same piece of pie. In Grandma's kitchen, it was an equality system. It wasn't based on equity, that my older brother could consume much more than I could. He should have had a little bit more of the pie. So let me put that down in terms in the work that we're talking about. Equality means that we identify what individuals need in order to reach their goal, what additional supports they might need, what additional experiences they might need to those that we're providing to everyone else in the room. So for example, to thinking about your work, particularly at Go Create, I had the opportunity to meet Senator Masterson last summer and view that program. I have always had aspirations to be a welder. There would be a lot more supports I might need to do that than you doing that, Senator. So I would need equity in order to be successful there.
Very good. My follow-up is you have spent a life in K-12 education, and now we're looking at higher education and the region system. And I've heard over the years that, when you get to the collegiate level, there's a lot of remediation that needs to happen. How would you respond to that?
There are some strategies that we could put in place to better address that. One would be around teacher preparation. Now, hear me say that I'm not pointing to teachers suggesting that they're the cause of the need for remediation, but it does make me wonder if the standards that we're expecting our students to exit with are taught in a full and comprehensive manner in our preparation programs. Secondly, all of us struggle in certain academic areas. It goes back to that equity issue. How do we identify what individuals need on a personalized basis and then create instructional plans that address them? So I know the Regents is looking at co-requisite curriculum, meaning When they identify a deficit that I might have, that doesn't mean I go down the hall for a different curriculum. It means while learning the same high standard curriculum, additional supports are put in place so that I can grasp those concepts and move forward. So I think there are some strategic things that we can do. Board of Regents working with the State Board of Education to strengthen that, to really focus on reducing remediation, and those would be a couple of examples of what we might need to look at.
Thank you. Final question, Mr. Chairman, is the same because we have political hot issues coming to us this next session. Would like your thoughts on some of the politically based theories like critical race theory and how they're becoming intertwined in higher education, and just your thoughts on that in general.
I appreciate that question because that term, you can't turn on the television without hearing that right now. To tell you that critical race theory, the language of that is relatively new to me, so that particular specifics around that I need to learn a lot more about. But let me share with you that from my experience, working in the most diverse community in Kansas, and frankly, if you don't know, Kansas City, Kansas is as diverse as Broward County in Florida, which some people are surprised about. But I have had the privilege of serving in that community for more than 30 years. I learned through that experience how important relationships are. I learned how critical it is to understand that everybody's lived experience is not the same, that race and culture and ancestry and poverty levels and wealth issues all play a role in how I respond to the world. A quick story, if I may. Young man named Van fled with his mother and sisters from Myanmar, found himself in a refugee camp. He was 8, left the refugee camp at age 13, having very little educational experiences between 8 and 13, arrived in Kansas City, Kansas, placed in the middle school where he should be according to his age. Huge gaps in his education, a lived experience that most of us could not relate to. So focusing on relationships, critical relationships as the focus, learning about what Van needed, that young man thrived, had his equity needs met, lots of resources, graduated number 7 in his class, and went on to one of our Regent schools. If I didn't know his lived experience, or frankly, more importantly, the teachers did not know his lived experience, they would not have been able to craft a plan with his family that worked. His race is not the same as mine and was not the same as many of us in this room. Understanding how that played in, plus his experience, led to success. Business leaders have also told me critically important that our talented students graduate fully understanding how to work in a diverse community and world by being critical thinkers and problem solvers and being agile and being able to relate and have communication skills. So those are the kinds of things, rather than, let me just label it as a current trend topic. These are the kinds of things that I believe we should focus on together. So as regents, when this kind of a topic would be presented in front of me, my first question would be, what have we already done in relation to this topic? Is there a policy? What's our focus? Secondly, bringing stakeholders to the table so that we have lots of people around the room talking about what is this issue, how do we learn from it, how do we establish policy, and then together creating our response.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stites?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Dr. Lane. You've touched on this a little bit, but you've served a very diverse group at Kansas City Public Schools, and you talked about the Diploma Plus program that you had there, but how do we help first-generation students all across Kansas who are excelling in K-12, but maybe, whether it's community college is that next step, or technical, or 4-year, I guess from your experience at the Kansas City Public Schools, how can we invest and help those students achieve?
So I really appreciate that question, and think about it in this way. there are some models of success that we have in Kansas that we could build on. First, Excel and CTE. I think about that for a lot of reasons, and thank you all for your support, because that gives our students opportunities to be fully immersed in quality pathways that lead to quality jobs, things that they may not have access to without being exposed to that program. Diverse populations need that because oftentimes our kids who come from diverse backgrounds don't have a network at home that can provide that exposure. So expanding Excel and CTE, and particularly looking to expand it to pathways that do result in those quality jobs. So working to reform that. Work-based learning is another probably new term to a lot of folks. It's all about connecting learning to careers. And we have a pilot here in Kansas that's been very successful, beginning with elementary kids becoming aware of what are the opportunities, middle school having time to explore those kinds of opportunities, and at high school being fully prepared. And that means designing their curriculum experiences so they're authentic and they look like something that you would do in the real world. So in aeronautics and thinking about the aircraft industry, what does math look like in that industry? And how do we craft lessons that help with that? And then certainly internships and youth apprenticeships and those kinds of things. And then the other thing I think about is the Kansas Promise Scholarship. Oftentimes, our diverse populations, underrepresented first-time college goers, they have no way of knowing how to navigate the finances of higher ed. So the Promise Scholarship gives me great hope that we will be able to create systems that support our youth and their families so they know that, frankly, higher ed is something that can be accessible. And then let me just end with reinforcing the internship and youth apprenticeship experiences that we need to grow so that our young people, no matter where they live in the region, have access to experiencing real work. And that's what Diploma Plus was all about.
Senator Petty.
Well, I have to give a shout out because Kansas City, Kansas, and I'm very, very excited that Cynthia Lane is here and was an outstanding superintendent for the Kansas City, Kansas School District, which I represent a great deal of. We have in Kansas City, Kansas, as you said, a very, very diverse population. And I thought your story about Van was could be replicated over and over, and the success might vary, but it could be replicated. And I know it's not just Kansas City, Kansas. I mean, we know across the state of Kansas, our population is becoming more minority, more diverse every day. And those families come with a lot of different experiences, and also, in many cases, I mean, I was a first generation to go to college. I know Carl mentioned that he was a first generation to go to college, but it hasn't changed. We still have many, many of our students that are that are in that same place. How do you see the regents working now that I think you would be bringing a very critical piece to the board with a massive amount of K-12 experience that you have. But how do you see the regents working to attract and offer an environment that welcomes those students that will be graduating from our K-12 in Kansas to go on to higher education?
When you say the massive amount of experience, it makes me feel like I'm ancient. Just had to say. But that question is vital, and it does not begin after the student graduates from high school. It begins in creating those visions early and connecting those visions to what's required to get to the dream, right? So that's why that relationship between the regents, schools, community college, tech colleges, and K-12 are essential. So, I have experience in the urban community, but I grew up in a more, I call it rural community, small community, little city, if you will. And when I was growing up, Parsons was thriving and growing, lots of opportunity all around, right? Unfortunately, as many communities now, they're struggling to find their economic foothold. So I have that perspective, which really informs what I think about as well as the urban experience. So, but I believe some of the strategies are the same. Exposure of what opportunities are available, strong business partnerships, because without the business community, we can't create what it looks like for kids and their families. Making sure that in high school, our families have support in completing the FAFSA, which is a huge barrier to a lot of communities, and I think KBOR could play a lead in that. Ensuring that there is more access to dual and concurrent experiences across the state for all kids, and that kids and families know if they have an aspiration for their young person to work in a particular sector, agriculture, advanced manufacturing, and those kinds of things, that we are very transparent with what's the pathway to get there. So the Board of Regents can take a lead and has begun that work in making sure that the career pathways at the high schools are aligned to quality opportunities. And that those pathway experiences that kids have at high school, whether it be through CTE or other academy-like learning experiences, really result in a smooth handoff to the post-secondary institutions. So a short way to answer your question is, it's all about relationships. It's all about strong partnerships committed to the same goals. It's all about making sure we have business there to inform what that work looks like, and then it's putting supports in place. I recently have learned about the model that's being used at Georgia State University, surrounding young people at the university with just-in-time advisement, meaning they're on the phone texting young people, they're asking if they've gotten these certain things done, and it's really like, almost like having your mom or your grandmother there on campus with you, keeping you moving forward. I think those kinds of things, if we communicate in the way that our youth communicate, can be extremely helpful.
Any other questions? I have a couple. While we were visiting the other day, you mentioned that there was underutilized community colleges. And that brought me to thinking about what your interpretation of the role of the community colleges in higher education.
I don't recall using that term, but perhaps that gave you that impression. But by underutilization, I meant the community colleges are a powerful asset in each of our regions. And I wonder if we're fully utilizing the power of connection between K-12 and higher ed, how we might create more seamless opportunities moving from one system to the other, and then thinking about how close to the ground community colleges and tech colleges are to understanding what business communities are needing. So strengthening our partnership from K-12 to community colleges, tech colleges, through the university system. I do believe, Senator Alley, we talked about an example of that being the Wichita State Corridor, where they have strong partnerships that allow them to recruit and retain young people moving from technical college then into their university system. I think that model is worth a deep dive exploring. What can we learn from that, and how can we make sure that all community colleges have a system of partners that help them grow talent and then give our students a way to continue their learning?
Thank you. I may have misunderstood you on that one, but that's okay. The other thing that we talked about, and that was the organization affiliations, and you've shown that you're on the Mainstream Coalition Executive Board member. That's from 2010 to present, I believe it is, or 2020 to present. I can't. But anyway, you mentioned you were thinking about resigning from that board. Did that happen?
I did. That's a group that I've been involved with unofficially for some time, officially for a year. But looking at that and then looking at the duties that I would be charged with as a region, I thought it best to step back from that one. So that very evening after you and I spoke, we had a board meeting and I informed them that I would be stepping away.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Our next Board of Regents candidate would be Mr. Winter. Mr. Winter.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We start out by just giving us a little bit about your background and about the Kansas Board of Regents.
I will. Thank
the
you,
floor.
Mr. Chairman. Might not surprise you being a lawyer that I actually made some notes, so forgive me if I'm reading more than I should. My name is Went Winter Jr., of course, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you. And actually, I was thinking about this. It's been 30 years since I've been here, but never have I been on this side of the hearing room. And it's you all are kind to make us all feel comfortable. I want to highlight how my family and I have greatly benefited from a Kansas education, which will help explain my passion for potential service on the board. I then want to identify how some of my experiences might help me meet the challenges and opportunities we have in Kansas higher education. First of all, my great-great-grandfather and grandmother started out the commitment to public education in Kansas when they moved from what is now West Virginia in 1856 and homesteaded between Lawrence and Lecompton. In 1869, they joined other Kansas pioneers and built the first one-room schoolhouse in that area, which was named Winter School, in recognition of the donation by the Winter family on the ground on which Winter School was constructed. My family just completed a renovation of Winter School, which earlier this year was named to the Kansas and National Registers of Historic Places. And by the way, if you really care to get bored, I've got photos of my great-great-grandfather and the school and all of that. My grandfather and grandmother met at Kansas State University, where my grandfather was a multi-sport letter winner. My family endowed the Fay and Ship Winter Scholarship for students in the College of Agriculture at K-State. My father went on to KU, where he was a football letter winner and graduated from the University of Kansas Law School after serving in the United States Marine Corps. My mother graduated from Mount Carmel High School in Wichita and also attended KU, where she met my dad. My dad and mom then moved to Ottawa, where Dad entered private law practice, served in the Kansas Senate for 12 years, including as chairperson of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, and was a rancher and ended his career as a small community banker. After growing up in Salina, my wife's mother also attended KU, where she met my father-in-law, who graduated from the KU School of Engineering and had a successful engineering career in Overland Park. My wife grew up in Prairie Village and attended KU, where she and I met. Mary taught first grade at St. John's Grade School in Lawrence during the early years of our marriage. Our three daughters attended St. John and Lawrence Public Junior High and High School, and each of them attended and graduated from the University of Kansas. As the oldest of 5 children, I, along with my brothers and sisters, attended Sacred Heart Grade School in Ottawa and Ottawa Public Junior High and High School. I attended the University of Kansas on a football scholarship, and I'm a proud letter winner. I attended KU Law School, where I was fortunate enough somehow to finish in the top 5 of our graduating class of about 140 students. I value greatly the high-quality education that my family and I received in Kansas. It improved our lives. I then joined the Stevens and Brand Law Firm in Lawrence in 1978 and served in the Kansas Senate from 1982 to 1992, where I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee and vice chair of the Ways and Means Committee. In 2000, I joined the Family Community Bank, where we survived the 2008 recession and grew the bank to locations in more than 10 states, while I served as CEO and co-chairman of People's Bank until the bank was sold in early 2018. I'm proud to be back at the little law firm in Lawrence, where I do part-time legal and charitable work while mostly enjoying our 8 grandchildren, who are all 7th-generation Kansans. Sure, I've got some brilliant things to say here. My training and experience as a lawyer will help me approach this job with analytical reasoning, open-minded fact-finding, followed by decisive decision-making. My service in the Senate will help me approach the job knowing the importance of collaborative discussion with various stakeholders, the need to respectfully challenge existing governmental processes if needed, and the importance of demonstrating efficient use of taxpayer and tuition funds. I will also be mindful of the possible need from time to time to seek input on legislative intent if the law or appropriations involving the board are unclear. Finally, my banking background and direct experience with the immensely challenging economic downturn in 2008 will help me appreciate the need to make any tough decisions necessary in times of economic change and how to manage through the process of right-sizing when and if that is needed. The Regions system annual revenue exceeds $3 billion, and it employs 19,000 Kansans, a very big enterprise that deserves very big thinking and bold action. With the recent census showing that only 9 Kansas counties have gained population, the region's universities and community colleges, which colleges, by the way, today already provide 70% of our tech training in Kansas, must take on an even more aggressive role to link learning and research with job creation and economic development. This might, for example, require or propose to us that we include expanding programs to other parts of Kansas similar to the programs at the National Institute of Aviation Research and the Innovation Campus at Wichita State, and the NBATH and EDGE District at K-State, and by strengthening our partnership between community colleges and universities. I'm not new to the higher ed policy arena. And I'm in fact on record with my commitment to utilizing higher ed in the fight for more jobs. In 1986, as chairman of a special joint legislative committee on economic development, our committee said, and I quote, "The following recommendations are designed to strengthen the education, research, and technology foundation in Kansas and to systematically link them to the business sector. They recognize that technological innovation is the sustaining force behind the development of new industries, new jobs, and productive improvements in the modern economy," end quote. That from 1986. I want my grandchildren and other children in Kansas to have the same opportunities I had from higher education, including the chance to stay and live in Kansas. I look forward to working with the legislature, governor, community leaders, and others to focus the power of learning to be sure in Kansas we have higher education as if jobs and people matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Yes, Senator Welborn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Winters. Well, welcome back to the Capitol.
Thank you.
Yeah. You and I visited, and I'd asked the other appointees the same question as it relates to, and you alluded to it a little bit in your opening remarks, the challenges with the shifting in population in the state of Kansas, 6 border region systems, 23 community colleges with 3 million people. The challenge is really before us as it relates to appropriations, and you kind of addressed that. Would you care to expand upon that a little bit?
Well, Senator, I would say that while I think my monologue here at the beginning about my benefits from higher education and all our family speak for themselves regarding my commitment and the importance that I think Kansas colleges and universities and community colleges have in our future. I also think that I'm not sure that with the population challenges we're having, with all of the challenges we have on the SGF, I'm not sure that the current system is sustainable as it is. I don't know that yet. I would be presumptive of me to say that I know that, but certainly those of us who do appreciate higher education have to be aware that higher ed needs to prove itself. And higher ed needs to continue to come back to the legislature and demonstrate that we are challenging the current system, that we are looking for ways to coordinate, for instance, the partnership between community colleges and universities. And if some of that requires tough things, then you can expect me to be a part of that. And that's not because I want to make it hard for the regions to come up here and get money from the legislature. It's because I believe that the regions are going to have to earn it more. All those demands that you all have on the SGF are astounding. They're more so now than even 30 years ago when I was here. So I think only those other agencies, like the regions, that don't have the built-in advantages of some of the other folks in education, I think they have to show to you that we're asking those tough questions. And I have a record in some of those areas as well in my work on the subcommittee on the smaller universities. Does that answer your question?
Senator Sykes?
Thank you for being here, Senator Winters. How has your experience as a Kansas legislator, like how will that influence your position on the board?
Well, first of all, I think we all have to remember, and people like me have to remember, that the Board of Regents is not elected. I was elected for 10 years. You all are elected. The board is not. So the board is an administrator. It's an agency that gets its marching orders from the legislature and the governor. The amount of money in the budget, how the limitations and directions about how to use that money, those I think are very important. I don't know the extent to which that's an issue with the Board of Regents. I do think it's healthy to have at least one former legislator on the Board of Regents to remind the board of the limitations that the board has and the need to prove to the legislature that we're doing our job. That's probably the biggest thing. The other is, as I suggested when I read the old quotes from 34 years ago, I think the same is true. We were put together as a special committee because we were having some big economic and job challenges. The census showed us losing population, the same thing. And so some of us said, we have to look really, really hard at what we can do. We, for example, had 3 or 4 different recommendations regarding income tax changes, and property tax changes, one of which, believe it or not, was to eliminate the property tax on business inventory. We couldn't do that in the legislature because it had to be done as a constitutional amendment. So I don't know the extent to which the Board of Regents has really looked at the hard things to do, to link those colleges and communities and businesses. But those are the things that really got me excited in 1986. And those are the things I think that would get me more excited, spending more time in the administration of higher ed.
Thank you. That's kind of opened up another question. You kind of hit on it, but you were very passionate about higher education when you were a senator. And I guess looking back, what—
You were following me? That's scary.
I was not following you then. I just—
Excuse me. I'm sorry, Senator, for getting my position here.
I do my research. But you are passionate about education and you're passionate about Kansas in general. But what are the areas that you have seen improvement over the past 20 to 30 years? And then as a businessman looking forward, what can we still improve?
Well, taking the last question first, and you may have to come back to the first one. Senator Bellinger and I were talking yesterday. One of my first assignments when I got here, the president said, "I'm going to point you to a very important committee. It's called the Committee on State Building." What was it called? The State Building, EDIF, Building Construction Committee. Well, he said, it meets at 7 o'clock in the morning and there's really no press ever there, et cetera, et cetera. But I also learned how important it is to understand the way that we have to keep up with our infrastructure needs and all the demands on infrastructure. Again, for those of you in the room or in the region staff, don't get me wrong, but I suspect that with the lessons we have learned and can learn from COVID, and the questions about whether we can expand and continue distance learning, the question comes up, what's the future for all the buildings that we have on the campuses? Are we going to need those? If we don't, then there's money that can be saved there. And I would say that's one of the things that needs to be tackled right away to decide what's the dynamic that we have going on. And you did ask me another question, and I already forgot it because I got too excited about the EDIF.
No, that was great. The other one was what has improved?
I think that when I was in the legislature, one of the things, believe it or not, that as a regent's flack, if you will, we all get called the senator from Johnson or senator from Douglas, and every now and then people said, senator from KU. Oh, no. So I do admit to having had that reputation, but I think that what we tried to do was move the governance, the coordination of the community colleges to the regions, because I think we all saw that post-secondary education was really aligned, and we needed to allow K through 12 to have their own governing body, and then the regents and post-secondary to have theirs. So that changed. And even though we didn't get it done when I was there, it was done, I think, in '99. I don't know what changes have been made. I don't know to the extent to which the power of linking the community colleges with the four-year schools, I don't know what's been done. I know that I read in the paper, there's reports that some kind of experiment between, I think, the KU campus in Johnson County with Johnson County Community Colleges has turned out pretty well. That's an exciting thing to link. Let's make it easier for kids, adults, to go back and forth. By the way, when I was in the legislature, there was talk of the community colleges being feeder schools to the regions. I found that a little bit insulting. We should not, I don't know whether that's still being talked about, but we ought to talk about partnerships. The notion of feeder schools really sort of gets down to subordinate, superior kind of thing, and that's not the way to treat people. That's not the way I think we should even use that terminology. I think there has certainly been some positive things with regard to economic development in universities. Wichita State has done a great job of that, I think, with their program in aviation technology. Their innovation campus is good stuff. The I-35 corridor thing was really interesting to me to find out what was done, and I'm curious about whether it's meeting its goals. And then K-State, of course, the NBATH facility, over $1 billion. I think that helps show the benefits of what we'd call pure research. I know that the site selection process required really good research folks at Kansas State University. There you go.
Senator Masterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Went. And actually, in your comments, you've gone far enough to answer one of mine already. I'll go straight to the politics. And two things. One layer is, you probably, if not the most, or one of the most politically engaged people we've ever had stand before us as an appointee. And that's not a negative. I don't know it's a pod, but my first question is, I know you're engaged a lot in electioneering in the past. Do you still, as a member of the board, or are you still part of some of those electioneering efforts and the coalitions that get deeply engaged in the elections as you take a position that does answer to the legislature and to the governor? I'm just kind of curious your comments on that.
Well, first of all, if you allow me, I'll back up just a second. The group called Republicans for Kansas Values started back in 11 or 12, I think, and the outgrowth of them was all, I think we limited our membership to former members of the legislature who are still Republicans. There were some people who had changed parties. It's a fine idea for some of us. But that group was put together largely by a woman named Rochelle Chronister, who was in the legislature with me, and I think she maybe even would have been the state party chairman for a while. The reason that came together was very specific, and that had to do with concerns that we had frankly, about Governor Brownback's tax plan and the way that was implemented. The discussions that I was part of with those 80 to 100 people really had to do with, gosh, we spent so much time bolstering the general fund and creating reserves, et cetera, and being able to fund the highway program, et cetera. Those concerns were that that might not work, that the governor's programs might not work. And then I think, so that was our effort to educate people about that. There was another related entity, Kansas Values Institute, I think, that had a 401c(d) or whatever it is, that did some of the money raising and spending around education. But then I think I know the legislature in 2017 or 18 maybe. You all are here, I'm sure, can tell about the difficulties and the challenges and the debates you all had about that. But as I understand it, that was the governor's tax package was basically reversed or largely reversed. That basically brought an end to those efforts from the Republicans for Kansas Values, because that was very specific around tax policy and economics and finances in the state general fund. So that organization, I got a call about a month ago from one of our leaders for this Republicans for Kansas Values thing. She said, nobody's doing anything. Do you think we ought to get started yet? And I said, I'm out of it. The work that I was interested in the tax package passing, that was what I was there for. And so I don't suspect that that's going to continue. And I can tell you that the PAC is on the shelf. We have not been engaged in any fundraising or political efforts or education efforts in the last, I think, 3 years.
So my other one is more around curriculum, and I've asked it to the prior. I'd like to get your thoughts on some of the ideological, kind of political-based theories that are being embedded, if you will, in higher education. Just get your thoughts on predominantly the subject days like critical race theory and things like that, is how they engage in. I'd just like to have your thoughts on that subject.
Do you mind if I go back to the other question, because I know it's important?
Yeah. Thank you.
When I'm a Republican, I always have been, had people suggest to me, why don't you change parties? And some of us decided that's not the way we roll. We wanted to bring about discussion and debate, lively, disagreeable as it might be, in the Republican Party. So I'm a big believer in the two-party system, and so I've stayed in the Republican Party. Now, people in the Republican Party may not like the faction I'm aligned with or some of our ideas, but I have always thought the most important vote for anybody elected to the legislature is the very first one, and that is, who are they going to vote for president or speaker, how to organize. And when I went to the state senate in 1982, I guess was for the 93 session, there were 21 Republicans and 19 Democrats. And I can tell you that that resulted in a couple of things. First of all, we had to have a really tight caucus. We went into caucus rooms, and you know how it is. We were at each other, and that was back at the time of the severance tax. And that literally tore our caucus and the legislature apart. But we always felt like let's be disagreeable agreeably, and then let's remember that we have to come back and be in the majority. So that was always important to us. The other thing I would say is I also learned in that context with the 21-19 split that it was often necessary and appropriate for us to look across the aisle. The majority leader was always over there talking to the minority leader about how are we going to do this, how are we going to put this together. I see you guys sitting next to each other. That's really impressive. But you know, my point is I found it necessary and important to have bipartisan discussions and bipartisan agreements. And I learned that no one party has a monopoly on good ideas. Again, maybe I'm the wrong kind of Republican to even say that, but I came from a district that sort of required me to look at that. So excuse me for divulging. Now, your question had to do with something also.
Your thoughts on critical race theory embedded in our higher education system?
Well, I don't support teaching critical race theory in our higher education system, and I'll tell you why. Where we have the opportunity to teach not theories, but facts, we should teach facts. And in my view, we do have in our society to continue the need to fight for equal rights, but I think that'll best be advanced by teaching the factual history of the long struggle in this country. Excuse me for reading, but it was important to me. The long struggle in this country for equality, including the existence of the scourge of slavery, the Civil War, why it was fought, the barriers to full citizenship created by Jim Crow laws, the Tulsa Race Massacre, which has had a lot of press lately, Brown versus Topeka Board and what the Supreme Court found in that case, and all those other facts. In my opinion, there's nothing more powerful than teaching those sad facts about the history of our country and the need then for people to respond by continuing that fight. So I think that, frankly, I think the fight for racial justice is too important to allow it to be distracted by controversial theories. We should let facts lead us to advancements in the struggle for equal rights. I say that with, I know folks might say, well, gee whiz, aren't you supposed to be a big advocate for open teaching in colleges and universities? We got too much to do to start to link jobs with people, jobs to our universities. And again, we don't have to go to a theory for us to know about, we have more work. We've come a long way in racial justice in this country. But if we can rely on facts, let's do that. That's my basis.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I have a couple. That's right. We had talked about the role of community colleges in higher education, and could you give us your thought on that with this context? The Board of Regents made a presentation to the Commerce Department showing that the growth in the next 24 years in Kansas was going to be around our 7 or 8 four-year institutions. And so the question I have, if it's around those institutions and the rest of the 90 counties, like someone said here today, was going to be a decrease in population, why aren't we having growth around our 23 community colleges? And what can we bring to help that grow?
Well, that question in of itself, Mr. Chairman, is an excellent question. And that's what I was trying to suggest by the notion that we have to be willing to challenge the existing system. But I would say, for example, I don't really understand why we still have 19 community colleges and none of them have the ability to get a four-year degree. Now, I know that the universities are concerned about bleeding off revenue from themselves, but there surely are some community colleges and some people around those community colleges that can really benefit from being able to be in those community college settings and get four-year degrees. That's thing one. Thing two is we have to look at what's causing the slightly increased population in some of these Regents schools. And I can tell you from the situation in Lawrence, the reason is that people are attracted to the Lawrence area because of the existence of the ability to learn. And the ability to learn is really attractive to people. As our technology goes on and we lose the ability to be in one job and we have to go learn another totally different job, doesn't that make it so important that our colleges and our universities have to be able to teach that? So if we have the ability to extend, for example, four-year degrees, closer linkages between the colleges, you may have heard what I heard, and that was some discussion among the Board of Regents and Dodge City Community College about Dodge City becoming basically a campus of Fort Hays State University. When I heard that, I got all excited. Now, I don't know, the devil may be in the details, but the opportunity to take the power of learning that exists at Fort Hays State University, for example, and transplant it so easily into another vibrant community is exciting to me. Now, I'll probably, again, get myself in trouble for saying that I think that needs more effort. There's a reason that didn't happen. I'm told that there were some concerns about authority and the mill levy, et cetera, et cetera. So those are real. But we already have, in all those counties, we have bricks and mortar, we have teachers, we have instructors, and we have the ability to export all that learning from these Regent schools to those schools. There's a campus in Tennessee. The University of Tennessee has a lot of different campuses, and one of them is University of Tennessee at Martin. And they have been a real leader in focusing their work on teachers' education, and actually have focused that, and they've been disciplined in not getting away from that focus in really, really high-quality teachers' ed. I'm interested in how that's worked for them. And that's another example of the kind of, I think, respectful challenges I think the board has to bring out to the community colleges, to the four-year schools, et cetera. Now, we also need to know what the legislature thinks before we go trying to go breaking down some paradigms. We need to visit with folks like you in leadership and find out what might pass, what might not pass, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if I directly answered your question, Senator, but there's jobs out there. There's people, there's community. Lawrence just got a pretzel factory. Well, they probably know that they have folks who are attracted to be in Lawrence because of the university. We got to make pretzel factories exciting for any one of our Kansas counties. Now, it may not work in all of them, but that's an example. There's businesses out there, and we ought to make it our business in the Board of Regents to wake up every day and say, how can we get better at bringing jobs to Kansas, not just to these 9. That's the exciting challenge. It's easy to get jobs in Manhattan or Lawrence or whatever. It's hard but exciting to think about how we can get those jobs to other communities.
Thank you. I have one last question, and I went to your packet. I did not see in your packet the Republicans for Kansas Values, but I did see Save Kansas Coalition. What's the relationship between Republicans for Kansas Values and Kansas Coalition Incorporated?
Well, I spoke about that earlier, and let me be a little more specific. The Republicans for Kansas Values came about really around Governor Brownback's tax package and concerns about that. That's where that came from. It was all limited to legislators, former legislators, Republicans, et cetera. Later, but the Republicans for Kansas Values didn't have a PAC, didn't have any ability to accept money for education, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why that other group came about. And also there were some additions to some of the other folks wanted to be involved in it. The highway contractors, and you all know how that works. The highway contractors were also interested in restoring, their fund, et cetera. So that's why the word coalition exists, because it went from just a bunch of former has-been Republican legislators to other more interest group folks. But that's the one that I said is basically mothballed. It isn't doing anything for the last 3 years or so.
I did see that you were on the board of directors I remember it's right here. You're still on the board of directors of the Save Kansas Coalition. Is that correct?
Yes, but we haven't had a meeting for a year and a half. It's just sitting there. We had a vote by email about a year and a half ago to terminate all activity and wind down the organization. So we're waiting just to get to this year end so we can file our final tax return and be done. But there's been no activity, and there will be no further activity in that entity, Senator.
The one question on that, and it came up here just a little earlier, was if you have the Save Kansas Coalition as the hub, there was a diagram that showed the spokes, and one of those organizations was Main Street Coalition. What was the relationship between the Save Kansas Coalition and the Main Street Coalition?
Well, Save Kansas Coalition was the organization in the middle that had a variety of different entities who were interested in being a part of it. And a number of those were K through 12 organizations. Some of them were highway contractors, and frankly, I don't know whether they actually put their name out there. And I'm not supposed to say where the money came from. I can just tell you that the highway contractors, as you probably know, were interested in stabilizing the financial situation in Kansas. So all those other organizations were part of this coalition, and the Mainstream Coalition was just one of those.
And basically then the center group, the hub, would then just funnel support to this other organization. Is that right?
No. Those organizations were all partners in that they were interested in letting some of their members know about how they could contribute money for education, for voter education stuff. But Save Kansas didn't give money to those other coalition members. It was the opposite. We were trying to get money from their members to go out and engage in these education programs. So no money that I know of went from the Save Kansas Coalition to any one of those partner organizations.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We have one more candidate, and that is a reappointment. Mr. Jonathan Gilbert, is he here? He's online, is that right?
I can hear you.
Good. Thank you for being here today. And again, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the organization that the Public Employee Relations Board?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Vice Chairman, and ranking members for having me today. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but like I've said before, I've been told I have a face made for radio, so maybe it's good you can't see me. I'm going for my reappointment for the Public Employees Relations Board. I've served on that for 2 years so far. And basically what we do on the board is we hear complaints from public employees, basically employees versus employer, whether it's practices or other issues. It's a very interesting board for me to be on. I enjoy employee relations and issues and trying to diagnose where we can do things better, especially within the whole organization. So I try to model myself off of a diagnostic leadership style, so that board fits my style perfectly. Originally, I'm from Dallas, Texas. I graduated high school and came to attend Kansas Wesleyan University in Salina, Kansas. I also went to grad school in Salina, Kansas. My career started basically when I was in 4th grade. I was working for a landscaping company with my stepfather, and I haven't stopped working since. So most of my work is either with the federal government or local government. So I've worked for the United States Census Bureau. I've worked for Saline County, Reno County, and now I'm the county administrator and public information officer in Ford County. So that is the basics about me. I'm not married. I do not have any children. Basically focused on my career thus far.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for being online today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you doing that. That is our final candidate. Yes, Senator Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might have a suggestion, maybe in a motion. I felt like I had enough new information in the oral presentation as it pertained to KBOR. I would like a little time to digest. However, I would be amenable to, I would even go as far as to make a favorable motion of recommendation if we need it, unless you want to do them individually, of Ewart, Height, Holloway, and Gilbert as a reappointment. But if it would be, and you can, a couple ways, you have the unilateral authority as the chair to hold those votes, or we could take a vote however you want to do it. But I'd like to see I'd like 24 to 48 hours on the KBOR appointments, if you're amenable, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments on the comment? Yes, Senator Petty.
Is there a motion on the floor, or is there just are we?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Masterson.
I would just say, I did say I would cast a motion unless there are those, if there are members of the committee who'd like to make individual motions. I was just saying, we can probably dispatch of those 4.
Senator Petty.
Since this is my first time sitting on here, I'm curious as the process. I think earlier you said that we were going to vote on each appointment individually. And so now are we taking a different track?
If it is my understanding, and correct me if I'm not understanding properly, we will take them individually. I think the request is that we do the 4 that are non-Board of Regents, and we'll come back tomorrow, more than likely virtually, and have a virtual meeting for those 3 Board of Regents. That's my understanding of the motion. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it's not technically a motion, it's a suggestion.
Suggested motion. Sure.
Yeah, it is the chairman's prerogative. And I would move we pass out favorably to the full chamber, Ewart to the Board of Indigent Defense.
Motion's been made by Senator Masterson and seconded by Senator Seitz that we take a vote on Michelle Ewart for the State Board of Engineers Defense Services. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, all those favor, and so there was no votes against. The motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to Mr. Taylor. Senator
Chairman, I'd
Masters.
move that the committee pass out the appointment of Mr. Heights as a State Banking Board of Commission favorably.
Second? Second by Senator first, we have a motion by Senator Masterson and a second by Senator Seitz to pass out favorably Taylor Height for the State Banking Board. Any comments, suggestion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to Monica Holloway for the Kansas Development Finance Authority. We have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move we pass out favorably the appointment of Ms. Holloway to the Kansas Development Finance Authority favorably.
Second. Second by Seitz. Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. And the last that we have would be Senator Johnson Gilbert.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the reappointment of Jonathan Gilbert to Public Employees Relations Board and pass that favorably to our chamber.
Second. Second by Senator Seitz. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion favorably, unanimously. And so then I'm going to suggest tomorrow at, I'm going to pick a time, if it's not okay with you, 2 o'clock.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we have a motion on that, and I think that's for discussion
Motion on,
on these next 3 appointments. I mean, that was thrown out here. We've had no discussion about that, so,
okay, we'll open up for discussion.
okay, I guess I would ask the reasoning for delaying the vote on 3 nominees that, for the Board of Regents, that we've had their information for, I don't know, over a week, and and we've, of course, had the opportunity to speak to all of them, and in many cases, probably most of us did, and maybe even meet with them personally. They've made presentations today. They're here in person. It seems to be somewhat, I don't know, inconsiderate of them personally, the amount of time that just goes into 1, the application, and also 2, the preparation on their part. So I guess I question why we would delay.
Senator Masters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because Senator from Wynot may not have heard my original comments. As I said, I felt like there was enough. My request was of the chairman because I felt like there was enough new information in the oral presentation that I would like at least 24 to 48 hours to deliberate, was the rationale. And used as the chairman has full prerogative. There's not a have to, there's not a compulsion to take a motion. I asked for that. And quite frankly, our consideration is of the people we serve.
Any other comments? Yes, Senator Seitz.
I just have a question. You said this would be virtual tomorrow. I have other plans that I have made, being out, meeting with senators and such. So that's my concern, that we have a time that we could all make sure that we are able to be present.
Yes. Anybody have is there a requirement that it has to be done tomorrow? Anybody? It does not have to be done tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be open to within the next, well, it doesn't even have to be 40. There's no time constraint on it, but the earliest convenience that works for the entire committee to be present for probably what would be a 10-minute virtual meeting.
Yes. I'm going to suggest that we, if you can't do it tomorrow, would the next day work for you? Was there a problem with anybody? We have a time that would be suggest.
I
Make a
suggest we have
suggestion.
staff coordinate with the with the members of the committee to make sure that we can all be present for that 10-minute period.
Your suggestion?
Well, the day keeps changing, so now we're to the 30th, which I'm still going to voice my concern that we are here and the candidates are here, and I don't believe that and everybody hears things differently, but I didn't hear that much, anything new. But if you're talking about the 30th, I would say that it should be at 9 a.m.
Okay, is there objection to the 30th at 9 a.m.? So I have 48 hours for that. So 9 a.m., that work? No objection. The meeting for the confirmation of the 3 Board of Regents candidates will be at 9 a.m. on the 30th. It will be a virtual meeting, and if somebody could set that meeting up, we would greatly appreciate it. Have that working properly at that time. So if there's no other business to come before the committee, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Yes.